So next up, we have a lifelong train fangirl and a tester from Dutch Railways. Veerle is passionate about the people behind the software, the core skills we need in IT, and the ethics that guide us. With a background in education, she creates incredible workshops. When she's not testing, you might find her practicing medieval combat sports or playing a sailing trip to the Channel Islands. She's here to tell us all about the Easy Riders, how Dutch Railways made bike sharing a big hit. So please put your hands together, go crazy, and welcome Veerle onto the stage.
Well, that was an intro and a half. Thanks very much for that. Cool, now that I'm up here, need a moment to breathe, but that's always allowed. So, thanks for being here. Today I'll be talking about how Dutch Railways made bike sharing a big hit. I'm very excited about trains. I'm also very excited about bikes. I'm very excited that you're all here. Before we start, a little bit about myself, not because I enjoy talking about myself that much, but because that way you'll know why you even need to take anything from me today. So, a bit about me personally. That was me last year here at Agile on the beach. Took that picture, thought it was quite nice. I'm a software tester from the Netherlands. I don't actually have an IT background, right? So I studied Italian and Latin. I've got this humanities background, and it's relevant because I feel like I take that perspective with me in tech. I turned to IT because of the realities of living in a capitalist society. But so I feel like that sort of human-centered perspective is always with me, and it informs how I engage with tech and how I think about it. So more pertinent to today's talk, I'm a QA engineer at Dutch Railways. They call me a QA engineer. I call myself a tester. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. And I'm on the team that builds the platform that processes all of the bike-related transactions at Dutch Railways. And I see you still looking like, why does a railway company need a bicycle team? I'll get into that in a minute. But so that's us. That's me and my team. Quick disclaimer before we start. Today I'm not here as a spokesperson or a representative for Dutch Railways. Today I'm here as an individual, as a software tester, and also actually as a user of the product that I'll be talking about today. My views and ideas don't necessarily represent blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. It might sometimes sound as if I'm here as a spokesperson for Dutch Railways. That's just because I'm very excited about working there. It was a sort of bucket list item for me. I finally got in. I'm very excited. You might sometimes hear that in the talk, but that's not because I'm speaking for them. Let me quickly, oh no, hang on. Cool. All right, cool. So, today's topics, what are we going to be talking about? First of all, the Easy Riders that I promised you in the title. Why do these bike products work so well for us? And what can we learn from that about generally successful products? I'm going to drop a spoiler because it'll make it easier to pick up on these themes later. Availability and ease of use are big topics in this talk. Then, because obviously I can't stand here for 45 minutes just bragging about how cool we are, we're going to go on a bumpy ride. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we tried to make this product better and how we failed at that for a while. We ended up with a lot of angry people. So what did we then do to try and fix this? And how did that work for us? So, again, a little bit about the product first. We've got bike parking, which sounds abstract. I'm going to be explaining it a bit more in a bit. Bike parking and bike sharing at stations countrywide. And this is not our core product. Obviously, trains are our core product. But we use this as a sort of secondary service for travelers to tempt them into taking the train. So this is basically an auxiliary product for us to sell our main product more. So this works for us. It works really well, actually. Why, I hear you think? Because there's tons of ways of getting to the station. You might take a bus, you might take the car, you can walk. There's a thing though, you need to know about the Dutch, right? The Dutch love nothing more than riding bikes. It's our favorite thing in the world. Has anyone been to the Netherlands? Yeah, oh, that's almost everyone. Right, so can you back me up on this? Raise your hand if you, on your trip to the Netherlands, at any point, stepped onto a path that you thought was a perfectly acceptable path to walk on, and then you almost instantly got killed. Yeah, exactly, by an angry cyclist. Also, almost everyone. Perfect. Because that means I won't have to do too much explaining about how much the Dutch love riding bikes. I'm still going to do it. So some quick stats for you. We've got 24 million bicycles in the Netherlands. That's more bikes than people. We've got 18 million of them. So do the math. We've got 37,000 kilometers of dedicated cycle lanes. So the one you stepped into. Only bicycles allowed on those. No cars, no pedestrians, right? We don't want them. Average distance cycled per person in the Netherlands is over 1,000 kilometers a year, not a day. This number is cranked up somewhat by school-aged children who have to like go to school 5 days a week, and they'll usually do it by bike, but still a high number. The image you see, that's the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands being chased by some journalists. He made a point of being seen on a bike as often as he possibly could, because it sort of showed what a normal guy he was, so trustworthy. Won't get into that. But I think it tells you something about our culture, right? If the Prime Minister wants to be seen riding a bike, that tells you the Dutch have a thing for bikes. So I'm going to take you through the average Dutch person's commute, or sort of railway journey, and then we'll see how we apply these products. So you're Dutch, you want to take the train somewhere, you need to get to the station, obviously you're going to take the bike. But then you encounter the first hurdle. Oh, forgot a point, pardon me. So the thing about these products that we offer is that, perfect. So the thing about these products that we offer is they're not new, right? We're not inventing riding bikes. We're not inventing parking bikes. The Dutch were already doing that. We just made it more available and easier for them. So back to the commute, right? You go to the station, you rode your bike there, and this is what the situation looks like. You need to leave your bike in there, and you don't like that. So a person wrote their thesis on these public bike parks. When I say bike park, I realize this is maybe like a very Dutch concept. I mean a place that is sort of like for intentional short-term bike storage for a lot of bikes. So a lot of bike racks all put together. So when you encounter one of these public bike parks, some person wrote their thesis on these and said those are usually on average at 107% capacity. That means they're full, all the racks are taken, and then there's also bikes lying and standing around elsewhere. So that instantly becomes like an accessibility hazard. These places are also bike theft hotspots. So a stat that I didn't put on the other slide because it makes us look bad, an estimated 500,000 bicycles are stolen in the Netherlands each year. So we kind of swap them around like pens. If somebody takes yours, it's an inconvenience, but you'll get over it. Still, it's an inconvenience. So you don't really want to leave your bike somewhere where you know it might get stolen. And then larger cities will usually have guarded bike parks, but they cost money. And another thing you might know about the Dutch, we're a bit frugal. The whole advantage of riding a bike is it's free. And if you're then paying to leave your bike somewhere, suddenly it's not free anymore. And maybe they're also a bit further away from the station. They're not going to be too close to the station. So suddenly two of the advantages of riding your bike to the station, gone. Suddenly that bus is looking a bit more attractive. So at Dutch Railways, this was a long time ago. This was well before I started working there. But still, at Dutch Railways, they started thinking about how can we make bike parking easier for people and more available at stations. And so this person who wrote their thesis on the public bike parks, they also calculated that if you make it free, if you make a guarded bike park free for the first 24 hours, that guarded bike park is suddenly a lot more attractive because you're not paying, so the journey is still frugal, but it's only free for 24 hours. So you've got an incentive to actually pick up your bike at the end of the day, right? So you don't get the 107% capacity kind of pictures. You get something that suddenly looks a lot neater. So you make it free for 24 hours, and because people are then actually picking up their bike, there's enough space for everyone. You don't need to just chuck it somewhere else. And then the final thing that I mentioned before is maybe actually the guarded bike parks are a bit too far away from the station, not that attractive. Well, what if we found a way of putting it inside the station, right? And here you think, Dutch Railways, yeah, that's great. They can do to the stations whatever they want. Actually, we can't. We're not the owners of the stations. It's a long story about privatization, and I'm not going to go into that either. But so a different company called ProRail actually owns the stations. So we had to team up with them. We had to team up with local governments. This was a huge undertaking. This took years. It took a lot of effort. But in the end, at this point, we essentially have 3 guarded bike parks at every Dutch railway station in the Netherlands, which is super convenient. So, quick bit about how it works. You use your OV chip card to enter. I know there's one person who knows what this is here. The rest of you, I'll explain it. So we kind of have like a system that's similar to the Oyster card in the Netherlands. It's countrywide. It's called OV chip card because in Dutch we call public transport openbaar vervoer. That's just a Dutch word for public transport. Nobody calls it that. Everybody just says OV. And then a chip card is a chip card, and you just use it to scan in and out of any public transport that we've got. And so you can also use that card to get into these guarded bike storage facilities. And it's handy because if you're taking the train, you've already got that card on you. So there's no extra hurdle to be taken there. Your bike is now safe and dry. Nobody's going to steal it. You're already at the station, so that's even easier. And so this is where my team comes in, Team Frame, I love yous. We build a platform that registers that transaction. So you scan in, and then if you scan back out within the 24 hours, you don't pay. And if you stay longer, we'll charge you like a small fee per day. And then our system will charge you the correct amount. So Dutch people were already parking their bikes. We just made it more available to them. We made it easier. We made it more comfortable. So you've left your bike at the station, you get on the train, you arrive at your destination station, and now you face another hurdle, right? Because now this is the trickiest part of the journey for most public transport. Are there public transport users in here? Does everybody drive a car, I mean? A few. Okay, cool, not too many. So you'll recognize this. If you want to go somewhere, then the first bit is easy because you've got your own transport. The second bit is easy because it'll just be a train that will go somewhere super accessible. And then the last bit, that's the tricky part. Because now you don't want to go to the station for the station itself, unless you work there, like me. But normal people don't want to do that. So you need some kind of mode of transport for that last bit of the journey. You don't have a bike there. You've only got a bike at home. And public transport's not always super available. So some places you can't really go by public transport at all. Maybe the buses are not that frequent. Maybe there's one an hour, but it leaves 5 minutes before you arrive with your train. Maybe the bus stop is still very far away from the actual place that you want to go to. So that's a bit of an obstacle. If only there was some kind of system that made bicycles available to railway travelers at every station in the country. We have that. So it's called OV Fiets. This is the other Dutch word you're going to learn today. OV, again, public transport. The fiets is just what we call a bicycle in Dutch. Fun fact, we don't know the etymology of that word. We have no idea where it came from. But that's just what we call it. So OV Fiets is just the Dutch Railways bike sharing scheme, essentially. So again, you use your OV chip card to rent the bike. And then this is available at most railway stations in the Netherlands. I say most because there's some areas that Dutch Railways doesn't actually service. Like in some areas, we've got local transporters, but any station that you can take a Dutch Railway train to, you can also get a Dutch Railway bike. You can get an OV Fiets there. You pick them up at the station and you return them to the same station, which is a key difference between other bike sharing schemes, like if you you got Boris bikes in London, which have like small stations throughout the city, and like you can pick up a bike and leave it somewhere else. We don't have that. We also don't consider that a disadvantage because we focus exclusively on railway travelers. So obviously other people are also allowed to use the bike, but our target audience is rail travelers, and we prioritize them over anyone else. So you pick it up at the station, you take it back to the station, but you're already going back there anyway because you need to take the train home. So again, the Dutch were already riding bikes. They already wanted to ride bikes everywhere, and now suddenly they have a working bike available to them at every station in the Netherlands. So this is what can make or break that journey for that person. This is what can make the difference between, actually it's too much hassle, I'll take the car because after the station I won't be able to get to where I want to go, or I can actually easily get there, so I'll take the train today. One more thing, we once introduced e-mopeds as a pilot. We thought, you know what, introduce a cool, extra little cool thing. For the Dutch, they didn't like that. They didn't like e-mopeds because the Dutch are not riding them. The Dutch are not already using that anyway. The Dutch ride bikes, and they like bikes, and they don't want an e-moped. So it completely flopped. We piloted 2 locations, and people were like, nah. So in the end, we had to say, okay, we won't do that because it'll be very expensive and nobody's going to use it. So the point I'm trying to make with this is keep it simple. You don't need to add very cool things. If you've got a good core product, like simpler is probably better. Now, I know that bikes is not necessarily everyone's jam. It's very much my jam. It's the Dutch's jam. I know other countries are not necessarily very suitable for riding bikes. So I thought, do a quick audience survey to make the whole story a bit more relatable. And this is also where we're gonna learn about successful products in general. Could I get a quick show of hands if you use Spotify? Cool, that's quite a lot of people. Right, now raise your hand if you had never listened to music before you got Spotify. As expected, that is absolutely no one, because everybody was already listening to music before Spotify became a thing. So that's actually quite a successful product for something that they didn't even invent. But before Spotify or other streaming services, you had to own a CD player and CDs, and you could only listen to the music that you had on a CD, or maybe you could listen to the radio and wait for your song to come on. I can see a few people that are too young for that here, but it was a thing, believe me. Oh yeah, you wait for your song to come on and quickly tape it. And then if the ad started just before the end of the song, that ruined your experience of the song forever. Quick aside. So yeah, Spotify just made music more available to people. So instead of having to wait for your song to come on or like having to own the CD that you wanted to listen to, suddenly you could listen to all this music. Second part of the survey, who of the Spotify users was eagerly waiting for Spotify to introduce music videos? I'll make it a little bit fairer on Spotify because that was obviously absolutely no one. Who uses Spotify ever to watch music videos? Still no one. That's perfect because that makes my point perfectly. They added this whole feature and people aren't using it because people don't want to watch music videos. People don't want this extra thing. People don't want e-mopeds. They just want the core product that they got your app for in the first place. So, conclusion of this wee bit, successful products, I think, are products that people were already using anyway. It says people wanted to use. It's actually a bit broader because sometimes you need to use a product or you are legally required to do something. Like if you've got a good app for doing like tax stuff. You don't want to necessarily do that, but it's handy if you've got an easy way of doing it. So you take something that people are already doing anyway, and then you make it available and easy for them. So available, by that I mean you need to have access to it when and where you need it. Easy just means you don't have any particular thresholds in learning how to use the product. Focused is another bit that I mentioned earlier. You've got your target audience, prioritize them. over anyone else. And then the last bit, keep it simple. You know how sometimes they say, keep it simple, stupid? And I'm always like, why would you insult me right after giving me advice? So I won't do that, but definitely do keep it simple. All right, we're gonna go into the second part. I'm gonna take a sip of your water. Cool, so the bumpy road bit, because obviously I can't just say how cool we are and leave it at that. I'm gonna go a little bit into what went wrong and how we fixed it, and also our intentions. So what did we think we were gonna do? Well, if availability and ease of use is like the big thing for us, then surely we can only improve the product by making it more available and even easier to use. So we thought we'd introduce this awesome new lock that would enable people to rent a bike by themselves, so they wouldn't need a member of staff anymore, right? I call it the electronic smart locks. Those quotation marks are there for a reason. We stopped calling it smart lock really soon after we started using it. The idea was, again, you use your OV chip card, you slap it against the lock recognizes that card. Your card is now the key to that lock. You don't need a member of staff anymore because you scan it yourself, and unlocking the bike just starts the transaction, and locking it closes it. So it sounds easy, right? It sounds so easy. It sounds so simple. Some issues that we were hoping to solve with this. The big one there was lost and missing keys. Thousands yearly. I looked it up, it averaged about 500 a month of missing keys. Because here's the thing, right? If you're so used to riding bicycles the way the Dutch are, you're also used to locking it, 500,000 each year. You lock it. It's like leaving your car unlocked. It just feels wrong, right? So it's a bit of a reflex for Dutch people. So imagine this, you've rented a bike, you take it back to the station, the person there scans it, so the transaction is then ended, but then you still have to put the bike away. So you go and take it where you need to leave it, and then you're already thinking about your journey home, you're already thinking about dinner, you're not even thinking about that bike anymore. So just your body, your muscle memory kicks in, you lock that bike, you put the key in your pocket, you walk away. 500 a month, that's quite a lot. And also the transaction on that bike, it's already ended. So we don't really know who has the key. We can ask the person who last had the bike, hey, did you maybe take the key home? But, you know, maybe they're gonna say no, maybe they don't wanna send it back, like we don't know. So at that point, you usually just end up taking off that lock and replacing it. 500 a month, that's a huge waste of resources, right? That's a huge waste of time for all of our staff. So we thought, if your card is now the key, we're not gonna have that issue anymore. We had to remind people at the stations, that's what that sign says. It says, aren't you forgetting something? And then underneath it says, like, leave your key in the bike, in the lock. This was huge. A couple of other things. The pressure on staff during peak times is huge. So on some of our bigger locations, like in Utrecht, as a city in the middle of the country, it's where I work as well, that location is huge. So it's got 800 bikes. We would put more in if we could, but like physically it's not possible. It's got 800 bikes. Those will all be gone by 10 a.m. on like a good day. But that also means that the staff have dealt with 800 bikes before 10 a.m. that day. That's a lot of people. And all of those people that want to pick up a bike, they'll have to queue because there's only so many members of staff that can scan out a bike. So it got a little bit chaotic at some locations, and we figured if people can start their own transaction, that will take that pressure off. I need to explain the technical side of the lock. I also get excited about this because this is the part that my team builds. It's also important for the story, so bear with me for a minute, right? So this lock, electronic lock, it's not very smart. It can do two things. The first thing that I can do is recognize these OV chip cards. It can recognize them and memorize the chip ID. So The bike's at the station, you slap your card against the lock, it recognizes, yes, this is an OV chip card, okay, cool, I got the number. It opens the lock for you. Your card is now the key. Second thing it can do is it can communicate with border routers that we've put up at the station. And it can send notifications of status changes to that border router. So opening, it sends that signal to the border router. It says, I have just been opened. The border router puts the info into our system, and we put your card number, the status change, so opened, the location and the bike ID, and that means, okay, cool, we've just started a rental transaction. Now you take the bike away from the station, you go to, I don't know, let's say the beach, why not? So you take your bike to the beach. It is now out of reach of the border router, so it can no longer do that communicating thing because it has nothing to communicate with. So it goes, whoops. So it goes back to being able to only do that one thing, that is recognize your card, recognize the chip ID and say, cool, I recognize this number, I'll open the lock for you. So you lock it wherever you want to go, and then you slap your card against the lock again, it unlocks, and you can use it again. And then you take it back to the station, and now it is back within reach of the border router. It can communicate again, and now when you close the lock, it'll tell the border router, hey, a status change, I have been closed. We put that into the system, and we say, cool, the lock was closed at the correct location, rental transaction is finished. Astute listeners may have noticed a bit of an issue here, and it's not a tech problem. Anybody want to guess? That wouldn't work. It's a good suggestion. That wouldn't work because when the bike leaves the station, it can only do one thing, and that is recognize the card that was used to start the transaction. So no, that would have been an issue, but we thought of that beforehand. So that was okay. No, the problem we had is a people problem. It's that we were asking people to do the exact opposite of what we had been drilling them to do for years. So we had that notice up on the station saying, leave the key in the lock, please don't lock the bike, please leave it unlocked, do not lock it when you leave. And suddenly, in order to end the transaction, you need to lock it. Do you think people realized that they had to do that? Do you think we were very good at communicating to them that they needed to do that? The answer to both is no, absolutely not. There was one specific scenario that kept going wrong, and I'm going to explain it to you in the style of Alice and Bob, except I took quintessential Dutch names. So, Adriaan rents a bike, right? And then he takes it back at night. But he has been renting bikes with us for 15 years, and so he knows, take your bike back, oh, don't lock it, cool, I'm not locking it, don't worry about it, I'm not locking it. Transaction is not ended. The bike is still his. To our system, he still has the bike. The bike is at the station, but we don't know that because the lock didn't communicate a status change. So it's still being rented, right? Now Bussy shows up. And Bussy has also been renting bikes for 15 years with us, and so he knows an open bike is an available bike. So he sees that bike, he says, great, open bike, I'm gonna take that with me. He may have read the instructions and thought, oh, better slap my card against the lock so that it will recognize my card as the key. However, the lock has not gone through a state change, and so it is not doing anything with that information. It is currently still recognizing Adriaan's card as the key. It doesn't give any haptic or sonic feedback. Bussy doesn't know this. So he's just slapped his card against the lock thinking that that is enough. And he is now out with a bike that he cannot open, but he will not realize that until he is 15 kilometers away from the station, at the beach, sunburnt, and trying to get home. But he can't. He's gonna have to walk. 3 people now have a problem, right? Adriaan is angry because, according to the system, he's still renting this bike and he's not. Bussy is angry because he's out in the middle of nowhere with no way of getting home except walking, and it's already a bit late maybe, and we're kind of peeved because we now have to go and pick up a bike in the middle of nowhere. We have to send someone with a van that's not free. That's expensive. Somebody has to go and pick up that bike. If they used the chain lock that is also attached, we also have to damage the bike a little bit in order to take it back home. So 3 people with a pretty big problem. This happened in less than 1% of rides in like the first few months of us having this system. Less than 1%. We clock 120,000 rides a month on average. That's 1,000 rides. That's 2,000 angry users, the one who is still paying for a bike that he's not using, and the one who got stuck and now had to pay for a taxi. That's 2,000 angry users a month. The newspapers got wind of this very quickly. They were not merciful. And we've got to pay for a ton of bikes to get picked up. So that was pretty bad. However, it was unfortunately also our own fault. We should have seen this coming. We should have thought about this better. My friend Heather Reed described it as, if your product allows users to do something, they will do it. That's not user error. That's you allowing them to do that thing. It is very tempting to insert ridiculous somewhere in here. I won't specify where. It's tempting and it's also wrong. You can't do that. It's your fault. You allowed your user to do this. They're now in trouble. Fix it. Fix it for them. So how did we fix it? Because obviously we had to get very creative in a very short amount of time. This was already happening up to 1,000 times a month. We had to be fast because the newspapers were already telling us how shit we were. Technology alone was not going to fix this. There's only so much technology you can throw at a people problem. It's not going to help. It's not going to solve the whole problem. So we had to look for a few different directions, right? One, we had to try and influence user behavior. We had to try and stop people from doing this thing they had been doing. We could look at the tech. We could look at the tech and try and tweak little bits here and there to see if that would help a little bit. And finally, we had to change the whole way that we were dealing with this. So first of all, user behavior. We had not been communicating properly with our users. We had this whole big list of instructions of how to use the new lock. And somewhere all the way down at the bottom, about 500 words past where the normal user stops reading, it said, oh, by the way, also close your lock because otherwise the rental transaction won't end. We changed that. We put up signs that only said, close your lock, please lock your bike. Please, when you return, lock your bike. The rental transaction will not end unless you lock your bike. In order to end the rental transaction, lock your bike. It was all over the place. We plastered it all over locations that had these new bikes. We also put an audio reminder, very much in the style of Mind the Gap, near exits. Lock your bike. Lock your bike. Have you remembered to lock your bike? We asked staff to ask people, have you locked your bike? Anything to get users to lock their bike. You can't put all of this on the staff at these bicycle locations because they've actually got a lot of other work to do as well. So at some point, whenever we knew that we were like putting these new bikes at any location, just office staff just went, figured, you know what, this is our mess. I guess we'll just clean it up. So a bunch of my colleagues from the office put on their high vis, would travel to the new location and just stand there all day telling people, hey, by the way, is this the first time you're using one of these bikes? If yes, lock it at the end of the day. Anything to get users to lock their bikes. Second thing we looked at was a few small tech solutions. So we had already planned to build like this cool new notification in the app. It's a Dutch Railways app. Most people will use it to plan their journey. And so we had planned to build this notification that would tell people, hey, by the way, you've got an open rental. Thinking if they're going to get the train, if they're leaving the bike and taking the train, a lot of people will then quickly check the app to see if their train is on time, what platform is leaving at. So we figured if we put like a banner on the app that says, hey, you've still got an open rental, it's very likely that they'll still be able to walk back and lock it quickly. That was on the backlog, I don't know, somewhere halfway down maybe. It went straight to the top. That got prioritized so hard. The other thing that we changed is in the system that my team builds, so the whole behind the scenes thing that processes transactions, that thing also has a front end and it's used by our colleagues at Dutch Railways, so like help desk staff. We had to change a little bit in there as well. This is pertinent to how we handled the thing. So help desk people use our system in the case that customers call with a problem. So maybe if a bike has a flat tire, the user will phone them up and say, hey, my bike got a flat tire, so I can't take it back to the station. Can you come pick it up? And so for most scenarios that we had encountered previously, we had a workflow for those employees, and they knew how to respond. We suddenly had this whole new problem that we didn't have a workflow for. So it was up to each help desk employee to then find whatever they thought was most similar. And that was different for each one. So we weren't responding to this problem consistently. Normally, if for whatever reason a person can't return their bike to the station, we'll find them. Like, it's expensive to go and pick up bikes, so we'll find them. We'll say, okay, well, that's 50 quid. Sorry. This was happening to people that were getting stuck. But that wasn't really their fault, was it? So first, they got stuck with a bike they could no longer use. They had to pay for a taxi home or somebody to go and pick them up. And then we'd fine them 50 euros. Not a good look, not a good look. People were not happy. And then the other thing is that it was only happening inconsistently because maybe some help desk employees would choose the route that got people to be fined and others wouldn't. So it quickly became this whole thing like, well, I got fined and the others didn't. Like, why not? That's really unfair. It was really unfair. So we had to change the logic to our system to help desk employees make consistent choices. And obviously the consistent choice that we ended up implementing was do not fine people. Whatever you do not fine them. We had to ask people, if you've already been fined and you've paid, please let us know because we'll pay it back. Not a good look otherwise. A final little tweak that we did was like we asked staff on locations to ask people like, have you locked their bike or have you locked your bike? But also to just check for unlocked bikes. It's one of those things that is not really going to do anything in the long term, but it might save a person from picking up a bike that day that they then couldn't unlock later. So it helped a little bit. Obviously, we learned something from all of this, otherwise I wouldn't be here, I would just be sitting in the corner ashamed of myself. So, what did we learn? That your product is probably harder to use than you think. It looked really easy to us on paper. On paper, we said, cool, unlock a bike, starts a transaction, lock it, finishes the transaction. How difficult can it be? That's the easiest thing ever. It was not the easiest thing ever, and we should have known that. And we should have asked users more, and we should have thought about them more, and we should have included them in our design bubble that the user was not in. Or if we weren't going to include the user in there, we should have done more pilots. We should have tested this a lot better. It was a long project. It ran for a long time. It involved many different people, teams, departments. Test results can get lost. So that's one of the things we learned. If you're gonna implement a big change like this, be sure that you've tested it and be sure that the relevant people have the test results. You can't solve a people problem with technology. You can make it a little bit less bad, but you can't solve it completely. So you have to get creative. You have to send office staff to a location to help users with this new thing that apparently is a lot harder than you thought it was going to be. If you treat your users fairly, they'll forgive you, probably, if your product is good enough. So I think that's the fundamental thing, and that's where the first part and the second part of this talk come together. If your product is loved enough, if it is something that people really want to use, then they'll forgive you the problems at the beginning as long as you treat them fairly. As long as you say, we messed up, we're really sorry, of course we're not going to fine you, like, we'll accommodate you in this. Be nice to them. The whole project, the whole way that it went wrong reminded me a lot of when the OV chip card was first introduced. That was 20 years ago. We hated it. Everybody hated it. We had paper bus tickets before then, paper train tickets. Like, that's the way to go. Yeah, I just got my paper ticket, nothing can go wrong. And then suddenly, we're all made to use this stupid chip card that everybody hates. it was riddled with problems at first. And now, 20 years on, nobody even cares that 20 years ago we had all these problems. And nobody wants to go back to paper tickets. Like, do you want to queue up every morning to go and buy a paper ticket? No, you absolutely don't. You want to take your OV chip card out of your pocket, go beep, and that's the end of it. That's what people want. And so if the product is well loved enough, you can sort of get away with messing up the way we did. Just be nice about it. So, some takeaways for different stages of product design, product management. If you want to create an entirely new product, right? Some questions to ask yourself. Do people really want to use this product? Are they already using it? Do they need it? Do they want it? Or are you just sort of deciding for them that they'll probably want to use it because you think it is so cool? When you're thinking about making a product better, so maybe you've already got a product, and you're thinking, maybe we can make this a little bit better. Ask yourself, will this improve the product that we've got? Or are we just adding stuff to it, right? Are we making music mode available, or are we adding music videos that nobody really wants? Who's your target audience? And are you prioritizing them over anyone else? Final bit, if you're already in the process of making your product better. So last slide, you decided, yeah, we're going to go for it. At this point, you're already in the process of making it better. Have you tested for people problems? Did you test for tech problems only, or did you also pick an old granny off the street and ask her, can you use this? Do you think this is easy? Will your users forgive you if you mess up? If you make their life hard for a few months, maybe a year? Will they come back to you, and will they keep using your product because they love it so much? Thanks for being here. Oh, no, don't clap yet. Rate my sesh, please, if you thought it was great. Also, if you thought it was rubbish, please also rate it. Let me know why. You can reach out. And if you want to hear more exciting stories about bikes at Dutch Railways, there was so much that I couldn't fit into this talk. So come chat with me at the breaks. Also, if you want to talk about other things, that's also good. All right, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was great.
Have we got time for questions?
We
Probably
do
not.
have we do have time for a couple
Perfect.
of questions. Does anyone have a question? Oh, yes, a couple. Great.
Thanks. Thanks for this presentation. That was super cool. One thing I didn't fully capture is what was the time frame to educate the customers to this new system up to the point where they were, okay, now I get it, and we've get rid of most of the
That's such a good question, and I'm not entirely sure, but I can tell you that it was really fast, because we took a long time putting these new bikes everywhere. Like, we've got 20,000 bikes, so it took us a long time to implement the new system everywhere. And that was actually, I think that was an exacerbating factor. The fact that at some stations we had the new bikes that you had to lock, and at some other stations we had the old bikes that you obviously mustn't lock. So it took a long time, I think, because of that. People were getting confused by the different systems as well. Basically, we're currently at the point where 98% of stations have the new locks, and I think that really helped. And I think from the point where we started telling people, please just lock your bike, like, the problem absolutely did drop on the graph. So, I think 3 months max. Probably less. Yeah, it went fast.
Other questions?
Hi, thank you. And thanks for talking about the failures as well. That was really good. 3 questions, but 2 of them are very easy. How did Bassi have the bike locked with a card they didn't open it with?
Because you don't need the card to lock the bike, you only needed to unlock it. So it locks with a wee button on the side.
Cool, thank you. Did the e-scooters also have to go back to the same station? when the e-bikes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so they don't have to. You can take bikes back to a different station as well, but it costs a tenner.
Okay, that's cool. Actual question then.
Those were actual questions.
Well, being a smaller part of a bigger company, how did that affect the decision options you had to solve some of these problems? Like, because I assume you know they got on the train.
Wait, sorry? Can you repeat the last part?
I assume you know they used their OV card to get on the train
Right.
when they left the bike. Can't you lock the bike when they left? Like what?
So you mean like if you've got like a notification system for us to be like, this person just took a train, but they've also still got bike open?
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought of that as a solution. I suppose we absolutely probably could have done that. Yeah, I'm not sure we're allowed to do that because of privacy rules, like there's only so much information that we can see about any given card. So for instance, like cards in the database get anonymized. So like we developers and testers can never like check a person's personal detail in the database because like only other people at Dutch Railways are allowed to do that. The train journeys that people make are processed in a completely different department. So I'm not sure if we would be allowed to combine those data.
Thanks.
So to answer your question, it influences solutions massively.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Great. All right, go on, one more.
Go on then. It's almost lunchtime. I feel like the other people without questions are getting like increasingly angry. You can go if you want.
I was really interested in the e-moped part of the story because I spent a short time doing some work in Copenhagen, and obviously loads of people cycle there. And the council there invested a huge amount of money in a bike share scheme that was e-bikes, and they completely bombed. And if you were seen riding one, you know, it's just real disdain because like locals were just like, you're a tourist, because and that was the phrase, they are just for tourists. And it's just really interesting that these mistakes happen in different cultures, you know. So it's a common thing, overcomplication of something that people were doing anyway.
Yeah.
So not really a question, I guess. But
Did you see the opening this morning? Quickly slap a question onto the end of that.
Yeah, let my brain.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah. No, I suppose there is a kind of question, which is, you know, how do you think sort of, you know, organizations can learn more effectively from, you know, the failures and mistakes that other organizations make?
That's a very generic question.
Present Agile on the beach.
I don't know how to answer that. I'm so sorry.
Cool.
You can always follow up with a follow-on chat to tackle that one.
Yeah, come meet me at the coffee table.
Fantastic. Well, that's all we have time for. So another round of applause.